Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. My guest today is Michael Kimmel. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Nice to be here, Aaron.
My pleasure. You are the director of the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities at Stony Brook University.
I am.
And how long have you done that?
We started in 2013. It's the first such center at any major university in the world.
So tell me, what does it mean to be a man today?
Well, I have to say, I'm a social scientist. This is an occupational hazard. I don't know that you really care what I think it means to be a man today. What I can tell you is what men think it means to be a man today.
That's good enough.
Because that to me is interesting. So here's the story that we have been telling in social science about men for years. We have been telling a story about men holding on to a particular definition of masculinity that you and I both grew up with. You know, hard, cold, stoic, never show your feelings, never cry, win at all costs, be competitive, etc. And that was the model. But the story we've been telling is men have held to that idea while their behaviors have been increasingly challenging and even sometimes contradicting that model. Young men today, young fathers, for example, are doing more housework and childcare than their grandfathers could ever have even dreamed of. So we've been telling a story of a divergence between the ideology and the behaviors. What's interesting is that the surveys about men for the past 2 or 3 years have suggested that that ideology is beginning to shift a little bit. Not that it's been replaced. It's not like, Ryan Gosling replaces Vin Diesel or something like that. But rather that guys are saying, in addition to being all those kinds of manly things, I can also be an involved father. I can also be nurturing. I can also be empathic. I can show compassion toward my partner, toward my wife, toward my children. And it doesn't compromise my masculinity at all. So what I think is happening is that the ideology is not changing, but expanding, and in ways that make us more human.
Is maybe behavior tracking ahead of ideology?
That was our idea, of course, that the behavior has been changing a lot, and the ideology was, in fact, we were holding even more strongly to it. But now I think there's a lot of indication that we're kind of relaxing, especially at home, especially in our families. Still in the workplace, men are still punished if they express things like, that they want to be involved fathers, because, their colleagues will say, I guess you're not committed to your career, are you? So there's still that in public. But in private, men are expressing a wider range of emotions than as I said, my life and my son's life certainly would be unrecognizable to my grandfather.
What about women? What do women expect of men today?
Well, I think that what has happened in the past, say, 50 years with women is, let me take you back to 1973. In 1973, a couple, a pair of psychologists, Darrell and Sandra Bem, coded every single behavior, attitude, and trait that people had as masculine or feminine, right? And what did they find? 1973. Competent, assertive, ambitious were coded as masculine, and empathic, nurturing, and cheerful were coded as feminine. Interesting. So what happened since 1973? Women said, that's insane. We are nurturing and kind and cheerful, and we are also competent and assertive and ambitious. So women have claimed being whole people. Now, for the past 40 years, men had been saying, no, we get the competent, ambitious, and assertive part. I'm not so sure about the nurturing part. So the big change is men are, in fact, becoming more complete human beings in the way that women have over the past 40 years. So these changes among women have been extremely beneficial to men because in many ways they model to us what it means to be able to be both compassionate and loving and ambitious and competent.
Seems like too many assignments to me.
Maybe so.
All right, what about in terms of men's perception of what women want of them? How has that changed?
Well, here's a question that I get asked most often. I'll tell you, I've been giving lectures on college campuses and corporations for a long time, and I get asked two questions, one by women, one by men, most commonly. And here's the question I get asked most by women. They say, on college campuses, they say, my boyfriend, when I'm with him, he's so sensitive. He's really a good listener. He really gets it. But when he's with his guy friends, he laughs at sexist jokes. He makes homophobic jokes himself. What's up with guys in groups? That's what they want to know. Here's what the men ask. So the women are telling us we should be more sensitive and empathic and really good listeners. So I'm really sensitive and I'm a really good listener and I can't get a date, right? How come we're getting these mixed messages from women? How come they tell us they want us to be, really empathic and caring, but then they go out with all these jerks?
The bad boys.
Right. So why do they want these bad boys? So that's the question that men tend to ask me the most is, are they getting mixed signals from women?
And the answer is yes, and tell me whehy.
Well, the answer is partly yes. The answer to why is a really good one. Here's a question for you. Some years ago, Anna Quinlan, the novelist, New York Times columnist, wrote a column, and she asked her readers, she said, okay, I'm going to give you two men. You tell me which one you want. The first one is short, very thin, receding strawberry blonde hair. He's completely earnest. He will love you forever. He is yours. He's never stray. The other is dark, tall, roguishly handsome. He's a complete scoundrel, and there's no reason he'll ever change. Now, which one you want? So I'm a professor, right? So immediately I take this right to my students. I ask my students what you think. And the students say, the women said, well, I probably should marry number two.
But I'll go out first with number one.
You got it. So one woman said, but could I have sex with number one first? And I said, that's fine. And then Quinlan says, okay, let's give them names. Let's call the first one Ashley Wilkes and the second Rhett Butler. Now who are you going to choose? And of course, everybody wants Rhett Butler. And so the same woman who originally said that to me says to me, yeah, but the thing about Rhett Butler, he's never been loved by me. When I love him, he'll change. And I think in that one heartbeat, what she got was women's romantic fantasy is not to have a man who's already fully formed, but rather a project, to have a bad boy that she can transform into a good guy with some of those bad boy qualities still intact. So women's romantic fantasy is that their love can transform a bad man into a good man. They don't want someone that's fully formed. That's, I think, what she was eliciting in that. So that's why I think, for generations, think about how many heroines in American novels or movies have transformed a bad man into a good man. So I think what that means is that is the source of these mixed messages. I also think that those mixed messages are declining.
All right, so how often, in terms of percentage-wise, does a woman have success affecting that transformation?
Well, of course, it's a fool's errand, isn't it? You don't get involved with someone hoping to change them. You get involved with someone because you like who they are, and they get validated for who they are because you like them. So it's probably not the most effective strategy. It may be hotter, but it may not be warmer and may not be as sustainable.
All right. Now, on that note, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Michael Kimmel in just a moment.
There's more of The Aaron Harber Show after this.
Peer groups and by media. Those are primary institutions of socialization. So from the time a child is born, they are already being bombarded with these kinds of messages. Here's what you're supposed to be like. Here's what you're not supposed to be like.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
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 I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to Aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. We're with Michael Kimmel. So, Michael, I'd really be interested in your take on when boys and how boys, young boys, learn to be men or gain knowledge of what society expects of them.
Right. Well, I think this is a really important thing because I think that although we like to think that this is all biologically driven and based on testosterone, I think actually we know better. So when I was in school, we had 3 primary institutions of socialization. Like what are the things that shape us? Family, church, and school, right? Which means who were the people that did that? Parents, teachers, and pastors, Sunday school teachers, etc. Which from the point of view of a child is grown-ups, grown-ups, and grown-ups. Now you know as well as I do, Aaron, that young people today are also shaped primarily, just as they are with family, church, and school, by peer groups and by media. Those are primary institutions of socialization. So from the time a child is born, they are already being bombarded with these kinds of messages. Here's what you're supposed to be like. Here's what you're not supposed to be like. It doesn't take a qualified anthropologist to walk into a toy store and see that one side of the store is, Barbie land and glitter, and the other side is, sports, science, and action figures. Now, what's happened in the past, and what's happened over the past, say, 40 or 50 years is some girls go over to the boys' side. They like the sports, they like the STEM stuff, they like, girls who code. But heaven help that boy who goes over to Barbie and glitter land. So boys know that they are being watched routinely, policed constantly by other guys. They're constantly being evaluated. Are you doing it right? That's sissy, that's girls, you can't do that. When I was in middle school, you tell me if this sounds familiar. When I was in middle school, one of our little tricks was to sneak up behind a guy on the playground and say, "Look at your fingernails." Now, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't
you don't?
heard this one.
This is great. Okay, good, because now if he goes like this, he's fine. But if he goes like this, you could beat him up, right?
Oh my gosh.
You're constantly thinking, seriously, men are constantly thinking about how we walk, how we talk, how we move, how we dress, how we cross our legs, how we look at our goddamn fingernails. We are constantly aware that other guys are watching us, policing us, because they don't, because they want to make sure we're doing it right. So what I'm suggesting to you is we learn what it means to be a man from a variety of sources. And so the parents who are saying, how can I help my son, navigate this? You also have to give your son the resources so that he can navigate the world you can't control, the peer groups, the media images, et cetera.
How do you do that?
Well, I think first of all, you talk about this stuff a lot. Second, I know that TV and the internet are amazingly effective babysitters. And very often, I myself as a parent was very tempted to sort of plop my son in front of a TV and go do some work for a bit. But the truth is, I think when we interact with our children, interacting with media, we are able to help them develop some critical media skills, that they can engage with it, they can see it. And they're very smart. They see things that sometimes we don't even see about how those things work. So I think that we can help them, we can guide it, but we also have to give them the sense of like, I can take care of this. I can make mistakes. I'm okay. Because everyone's going to screw it up.
How about in other societies? How do boys learn what they're supposed to be?
Well, this is a really interesting question for me because, I work on a college campus. And as you know, on college campuses, there's lots of stories that are coming out constantly about hazing, about fraternities, about military groups, units, about sports teams. And one of the things that's interesting is there are a lot of cultures out there, that have elaborate initiation rituals for boys. But the difference between every single other culture and the American college campus is very simple. In every other culture, it's the grown men who plan the ritual, who organize it, who supervise it, and who are there at the end to say, Aaron, you've made it, you're now a man. You never have to have an identity crisis, and you never have to prove it again. Only on the American college campus do we have the coach saying, I'm going on a recruiting trip, don't tell me what you're doing with the rookies. Only then does the fraternity advisor say, I can't know what you're going to do, I need plausible deniability, don't tell me about Hell Night or whatever. So what you have on college campuses is 18-year-old boys trying to prove their masculinity to 19-year-old boys. That cannot work. Therefore, they have to constantly be doing it, right? They have to constantly be proving it because it's unprovable. So my feeling about this is that we grown-ups have some role to play in this as well. Because that's the source of that kind of, that guys have to kind of prove it over and over. It's like relentless.
So one of the things I'd really like to get into is your study of men in different, both in the United States, in Germany and Sweden, and people who have really gone out of the mainstream, or what we would consider the mainstream. And I'd like, and of course you've done a tremendous amount of research there, and I think most people feel that the young men who have become neo-Nazis, or the young men who have become jihadists, or the young men who have committed violent crimes, that there's something wrong, that they're all mentally ill. And in fact, while I'm sure it's true that many of them have suffered abuse at home growing up, have probably not had great role models as a rule, suffered some kind of trauma, I think one of the things your research has shown is that, well, there are a lot of people that have those experiences that don't go down the path that I just described. So one of the things that we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'd really be interested in your findings and what your analysis was of where do young men in particular really go wrong, especially in the context of our discussion of when you grow up, how do you really grow up as a boy? So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Michael Kimmel.
There's more of the Aaron Harber Show after this.
And I think, and if I'm going to be psychological about this for a moment, I think one of the real damage that we do to young boys is we tell them at age 3 or 4, all right, stop hanging out with your mother now. Switch your allegiance. You have to be with your dad. You have to do all this dad stuff. Stop, being around mom. Go out and throw a football.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Michael Kimmel. This is part one of our special two-part series with Michael, so make sure you watch part two as well. So, again, tell me about your thinking, your analysis, the research you've done, where you have, certainly, as I mentioned, a lot of young men in society who have had troubled lives, grown up in difficult situations, and a very small percentage really veer off the path. So kind of two questions. One is, how do the vast majority actually stay on a good path, despite the experiences they've had, the troubles they've encountered? I'd be really interested in that first, and then I'd like to talk about the really bad boys.
Cases, yeah. Well, I think what we know is, there are boys in every single middle school and high school in this country who are bullied and beaten up, gay baited, gay bashed all the time. And I'm not just talking about, oh, that's so gay. I'm talking about guys who are like beaten up and tortured, and yet most of them do not end up picking up an assault weapon and walking into their school and opening fire. Most of them do not become white supremacists, neo-Nazis, etc. Most of them are, as we say in the biz, resilient. They manage to navigate their way through it. They may have scars, but they get on with it. Now, what predicts resilience, right? What predicts the boy's ability to navigate his way through this if he's the target of these sorts of things? And this is important for parents to know, I think, and educators. The first predictor is what we call a charismatic adult. Some grown-up, think back in your own life, Aaron, some grown-up who got you, who saw who you really were, who really validated you. Now, it could be a parent, or a teacher, or a coach, or a pastor, or an uncle, or a cousin, or a grandfather, an older brother, or even like, a big brother organization. Somebody who saw the you in you and sort of validated that. If you have that in your life, that's the first predictor. The second predictor is a good male friend. Now, I'm not talking about a bro. I'm talking about a friend, someone who says to you, I know what they're saying about you, but I still like you for who you are. I see you, right? So it's about that idea of being seen. The third predictor actually turns out to be a good female friend, not a girlfriend, but a girl who is a friend, because she also can validate that she sees him in a way that maybe a guy friend might not be able to. Those three together will consistently predict that the boy will have enough sort of underneath him a foundation to navigate his way through.
What is the relative importance of each of those three?
It's hard to say. I probably think as a parent that I would want to overvalue the charismatic adult part. But I also notice,
especially being a charismatic adult.
Well, no, I'm hoping that, But I think also but watching my own son grow up, I think all three of them. I think, frankly, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think first of all, I think the fact that he had girls who were his friends was really, really important to him because he could talk about more than sports with them. And he would talk about that. And I think also that the charismatic adults in his family were equally his mom and me. And I think, and if I'm going to be psychological about this for a moment, I think one of the real damage that we do to young boys is we tell them at age 3 or 4, all right, stop hanging out with your mother now. Switch your allegiance. You have to be with your dad. You have to do all this dad stuff. Stop, being around mom. Go out and throw a football. It seems to me that if you have ever watched a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old boy with his mom, there's virtually nothing more gorgeous than that. And and in the name of some ideology, we're going to tear him away from the relationship that he knows and trusts the most, I think we do an enormous amount of damage.
What about, I mean, my guess is there are a lot of boys who don't have friends who are girls.
You know what? That's a really interesting question. That's the subject of my next bit of research, actually. The biggest change in young people's lives today is cross-sex friendships. When I started teaching 25 years ago, I would ask my students, how many of you have a good friend of the opposite sex? I'd get like 15, 20% hands. Because 25 years ago was when Harry met Sally, right? And you remember that scene where they're talking about can men and women be friends? And he says, oh no, sex is always gets in the way. Well, I'll tell you, I can walk into college classrooms today and I can say, is there anyone here who doesn't have a good friend of the opposite sex? And I almost never see a hand anymore. The truth is that young men and women are more capable of cross-sex friendships. Now, I have a theory about why that is, but I also think the implications of that are extraordinarily positive. Because who do you make friends with? You don't make friends with your boss. You don't make friends with your subordinate. You make friends with, what's the word we use? Peers, your equals. So young people have more experience in day-to-day interpersonal gender equality than any generation that has ever walked on this planet. That can't help but be good, right? It's going to mean that they're better able to be colleagues at the workplace. They're better able to be more egalitarian parents, which they are. Millennials are proving to be more egalitarian parents than Gen X, who were certainly more egalitarian than boomers, who were way more egalitarian than their greatest generation parents. So, in fact, there is greater gender equality on the interpersonal level. I think that's really positive.
I would think also that would, I mean, if that's happening, because that's happening at much younger ages, that would have very positive implications for young people in their teens.
Absolutely.
And what kind of research has been done on that?
Not much, and that's why we're trying to investigate now. We're undertaking a large survey to find out the extent to which people have these friendships. If they don't, when did they stop? Why? What role they have in their lives? Because we're really curious to see whether there really is a generational change.
Well, and certainly one of the things that has been studied a lot, and I know we're about to end the show, is the fact that relationships change a lot in middle school, and attitudes and self-expectations of boys and especially of girls seem to change in a major way in middle school. Just to talk quickly about that.
So young boys tend to have very close friendships with other boys. There's really good research about this. And they have a very elaborate language to describe those friendships. And sometime around 12, 13, when puberty hits, when adolescence hits, when girls are like you can't go near, they lose those friendships with boys. It's partly homophobia, the level of intimacy and connection that they felt when they were 8 or 9. They can't sustain that in the face of all this gender policing that we were talking about before. And so when you interview these boys again when they're 16 or 17 about their male friends, their language shifts to, oh, I used to have some really, really close friends, but I miss them. But they don't have that kind of ability to be so vulnerable with each other, because now the shell is starting to form. Now the armor is being put on. Now they have to go out there, prove their masculinity.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're going to continue this conversation. We haven't even talked about the really bad boys.
I know yet.
That I want to talk about. But Michael, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron.
And we'll keep you here for part 2. That was Michael Kimmel. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching, and be sure to watch part 2 of our 2-part series. We'll see you next time.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.